Okay, so it continues. Okay, this book here says the Hyskos in Egypt, and we don't see any more on that. It's all about Abraham, according to the scriptures. The arrival of the nomad. Okay, now it talks about the Hyksos on page 102 of this book. Being Israel thrive in these surroundings so adapted to the traditional tastes. Even if their subsequent importance as a nation has been overestimated, they did not at least share the fate of many foreign tribes who were, when transplanted into Egypt, waned and died out, or at the end of 2 or 3 generations became merged into native populations. Footnote indicated down the bottom. Footnote at the bottom. We are told that when the Hebrews left Ramses, they were about 600,000 on foot that were men, besides children. Okay, it's not Ramses. They found of late that the king wasn't actually Ramses, because the chronological timetable done by certain archaeologists or Christians or whatever was about 100 years out. This one guy looked at it and found they were way out, right? Too far forward or something like that. So yeah, there was the city of Ramses which apparently the Assyrians went in there and smashed up the temple or something like that. Maybe occupied it for a while, according to the histories. Okay, so they were told that when the Hebrews left Ramses, they were about 600,000 on foot that were men besides children, because the Bible doesn't say exactly who that king was, that Pharaoh was. So they probably left that city, okay, of Ramses. Not too sure on that one. It's just what we've come across. And a mixed multitude went up also with them, and flocks and herds, even very much cattle. Exodus 12, 37, 38. The pharaohs regulated their obedience to their ruler by the energy he displayed, or by their regard for the resources at his disposal. Thebes had never completely lost the ascendancy which it obtained over them at the fall of the Memphite dynasty. The accession of the Zoite dynasty, is that how you say it? Not too sure. And the arrival of shepherd kings, and relegating Thebes unceremoniously to a second rank. Okay, so prior you said they weren't called the shepherds or the shepherd kings. They were more like pillagers, robbers, thieves, pests, according to the Egyptians in their particular language. Okay. And relegating Thebes unceremoniously to a second rank. Had not discouraged it, etc., etc. The period of hegemony attributed by the chronicles to the Hyksos of the 16th dynasty was not probably, as far as they were concerned, years of perfect tranquility or of undisputed authority. In describing the sole names on the list, the compilers denoted merely the shorter or longer period during which the Theban vassals failed in their rebellious effort and did not dare to assume openly the title or ensigns of royalty. A certain Apophis, probably the same who took the pronomen of Anknuri or Nunri, was reigning at Tanis when the decisive revolt broke out, and etc., etc. A romance which was very popular for the literati for 500 years later asserted that the real cause of the war was a kind of religious quarrel. It happened that the land of Egypt belonged to the fever-stricken Hyksos, and there was no supreme king at that time. It happened then that the king Saknunri was the region of the city of the south, and that the fever-stricken of the city of Ra were under the rule of Ra Opopi and Avaris. The whole land tribute to the latter in manufactured products, and the north did the same in all the good things of the Delta. Now the king Ra Opopi took him to himself Sutku for Lord, and he did not serve any other god in the whole land except that god, right? of that person. Suit who? Built a temple, etc., etc. And he rose every morning to sacrifice his daily victims, and chief vessels were with the gardens of flowers and all this sort of stuff. And then they decide to slaughter these hippopotami in a pool of the town, in order that their slumber may come to be, blah, 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 all this sort of stuff. Okay, anything more on the Hyksos? I'm trying to find that which was related by Dr. Henry Clark or Ben Yochanan about the Hyksos, to see if what he said matches. But this is the problem with this book. It mentions something that goes into land, altitude, latitude, and all this other stuff in great detail. Okay, it talks about Moses, who possibly, or what we felt, is he attacked Avaris and he died in the fight. He was killed somehow, they didn't know how. And then his younger son tried to capture it, but he died. And then supposedly Moses' wife was still around, but she had a 10-year-old son, and she couldn't really send him to war because he's only 10, right? So she taught him the arts of war. She sat on the throne as a king, pharaoh, right? Maybe whether it's false beds or that sort of stuff. Until he grew up, and then he knew the arts of war, etc., and maybe attacked it, drove them out. We can't seem to find it in here. Okay, we cannot be sure that she was. Who's this? It's possible, as frequently happened, that the young sister. I should get back over here. Two younger brothers, Kamosu and a second Amosu, the Moses of the Greeks, assumed the crown after him, after this Amosu died. It is possible, as frequently happened, that the younger sister Amasi Nofritari entered the harem of both brothers consecutively. We cannot be sure that she was united to Kamosu, but at all events, she became the wife of Moses, and the rights which she possessed, together with those which her husband had inherited from their mother Ahotpu. It's a strange name. Ahotpu. Gave him a legal claim such as was seldom enjoyed by the pharaohs of that period, so many of them being sovereigns merely de facto, while he was doubly king by right. Tiachni, Kamosu, and Amosis quickly succeeded each other. One waged war against the shepherds, the Hyskos. Doesn't know whether he fell upon the field of battle or was the victim of some plot. The appearance of his mummy proves that he died a violent death when about 40 years of age. 2 or 3 men, whether assassins or soldiers, must have surrounded and dispatched him before help was available. A blow from an axe must have severed part of his left cheek, exposed the teeth and fractured the jaw, and sent him senseless to the ground. Another blow must have seriously injured the skull, and a dagger or javelin has cut open the forehead on the right side, a little above the eye. His body must have remained lying where it fell for some time. When found, decomposition had set in, and the embalming had to be hastily performed as best it might. The hair is thick, rough and matted. The face had been shaved on the morning of his death, but by touching the cheek we can ascertain how harsh and abundant the hair must have been. The mummy is that of a fine, vigorous man who might have lived to 100 years, and he must have defended himself resolutely against his assailants. His features bear even now an expression of fury. A flattened patch of exuded brain appears above one eye, the forehead is wrinkled, and the lips, which are drawn back in a circle about the gums, reveal the teeth still biting into the tongue. Kamosu did not reign long. We know nothing of the events of his life, etc., etc. Okay, with regard to Kamosu, possessed in addition to the miniature bark which was discovered on the sarcophagus of Queen Ahotpu, and which is now in the museum at Giza, a few scattered references to his worship existing on the monuments on the stele at Giza. at Cusae, on a table of offerings in the Marseilles Museum, and in the list of princes worshipped by the servants of the necropolis. His pyramid was at Dra Abu Nigar, besides those of Tiuaa and Amenthoses I. The name Amosu or Amosi is usually translated child of the moon god. The real meaning is the moon god has brought forth him or her, referring to the person who bears the name, being understood. Okay, so, any more on Hyksos? Okay, let's have a quick look here. Moses seems to have been a strong, active, warlike man. He was successful in all the wars in which we know him to have been engaged, and he ousted the shepherds from the last towns occupied by them. It is possible that modern writers have exaggerated the credit due to Moses for expelling the Hyksos. He found the task already half accomplished, and the warfare of his forefathers for at least a century must have prepared the way for his success. If he appears to have played the most important role in the history of the deliverance, it is owing to our ignorance of the work of others, and he thus benefits by the oblivion into which their deeds have passed. Taking this into consideration, we must still admit that the shepherds, even when driven into Avaris, were not adversaries to be despised. Forced by the continual pressure of the Egyptian armies into this corner of the delta, they were, as a compact body, the more able to make a protracted resistance against very superior forces. Yeah, they kept them at bay for quite a while. The impenetrable marshes of Men Salah on the north and the desert of the Red Sea on the south completely covered both their wings. The shifting network of the branches of Nile, together with the artificial canals, protected them as by a series of moats in front, while Syria in their rear offered them inexhaustible resources for revictualling their troops or leaving recruits among tribes of kindred race. Okay, so their own people joined the ranks. As long as they could hold their ground, their invasion wasn't always possible. One victory would bring them to Memphis, and the whole valley would again fall under their suzerainty. Moses, by driving them from their last stronghold, averted this danger. It is therefore not without reason that the official chroniclers of later times separated him from his ancestors and made him the head of a new dynasty. His predecessors had in reality been merely pharaohs on sufferance, ruling in the south, etc., etc. They were reckoned in the 17th century dynasty, together with Hyksos, sovereigns of uncontested legitimacy, while their successors were chosen to constitute the 18th dynasty, comprising pharaohs with full powers, tolerating no competitors, and uniting under their firm rule the two regions of which Egypt was composed, the possessions of Set and the possessions of Horus. So would that be like the north and the south? Upper and Lower Egypt became united. Manetho, or as the bridges call the king who drove out the shepherds, Amoses or Tethmoses. Maybe they could also translate it into Thutmoses. Lepsius thought he saw grounds for preferring the second reading and identified this Tethmoses with Thutmose, Manapiri, the Thutmoses 3 of our list. Moses could have only driven out the greater part of the nation. This theory, to which Naville still adheres, as also does Steindorf, was disputed nearly 50 years ago, or prior to this book, by E.D. Rouge. Nowadays, they were obliged to admit afterward that subsequent to the 50th year of Moses, there were no longer shepherd kings in Egypt, even though a part of the conquering race may have remained in the country in a state of slavery, as we shall soon have occasions to observe. So maybe, according to that, the Hyksos, these robbers, pillagers, etc., etc., were there. Then they got driven out. Then they went to this kingdom. They occupied this other kingdom. They kicked these people out of there, and they held the ground there for a while till they were finally ousted. First being ousted out of Egypt because they're making too much noise, they're trouble, whatever, by a certain king. Right. These others remained there, as we found, supposedly said that they had powers of position and they'd rather stay there, right? But these other ones, like, something like I think it was John Henry Clark or something like that said, some of them were really nice, really good, so Egyptians liked them, whatever. He said, you can stay here, kick these other sillies out, right? These ones that are annoying, driving their chariots up and down early hours of the morning, just being pains in the bum, right? Get them out, and other reasons may have applied as well. So they went to Avaris, took over this, kicked these other people out of there, ruled there for a while, were attacked constantly, but they held their ground until eventually they were ousted out. Okay, so so the remainder left there were possibly these Israelites, maybe. Yeah, because didn't Jacob go there prior to all of this? His son Joseph was there, right? He was given this position, and he helped the Egyptians, apparently according to Scripture, with food, right? He said, there's going to be 7 years of plenty and 7 years of famine, so, he grew all this wheat, all this grain or whatever, stocked it up in their barn, so when this thing happened, they didn't starve to death. And the king was very happy with them and all this sort of stuff, because he prophesied something that came true. Okay, so there's according to this, there's a remainder there. We did read years and years and years ago that when Jacob went to Egypt to see Joseph, etc., he found that there were other people already there, something like that, because they had a famine in Goshen, apparently, in parts of Europe. This is all according to the Pan-African researcher, long past, John Henry Clark and Ben Yochanan. That we've come across. Okay, and one of them went to, I think it was Dr. Ben, went to Egypt, and he looked at all the pillars, etc., all the hieroglyphics on the wall, and said, he explained it to this European guy. He was quite amazed at it. There's a history on there, what happened, which vastly differs from the biblical Israelite version. It talks about the Hyskos and all this sort of stuff. It's very different. But we just covered that. Okay. So there was a remainder there. These Hyskos were ousted, and they ended up in Avaris, etc., etc. And then they were ousted from there, eventually. Okay, you go see if there's any more. Okay, then they wander off into all this other detail, non-Hyksos related. The author goes into great detail on that. And here's the ruins of a pyramid of Kula near Mohammerea. And there's a footnote indicated there. Drawn by Falchiguren from a photograph by Emil Brugisch Bay. So that's one of their pyramids, It doesn't give you any detail on, because here it's got near Mohammerea. Okay, so it'll be interesting to find out if that was like what that actually meant, right? Any relation to Muhammad? Not too sure on that one. If it's an early period, it probably wasn't. Okay, and here it details about King Ahmosis when he encamped before Avaris at 80,000. That's probably how much troops he had, something like that. The immense multitude failed to bring matters to a successful issue, and the siege dragged on indefinitely. The king at length preferred to treat with the shepherds, and gave them permission to retreat into Syria safe and sound, together with their wives, their children, and all their goods. This account, however, in no way agrees with the all-too-brief narration of events furnished by the inscriptions in the tomb. The army to which Egypt really owed its deliverance was not the undisciplined rabble of later tradition, but on the contrary consisted of troops similar to those which subsequently invaded Syria, some 15,000 to 20,000 in number, fully equipped and ably officered, supported moreover by a fleet ready to transfer them across the canals and arms of the river in a vigorous condition and ready for the battle. It may be pointed out that Mose, son of Abina, was a sailor and a leader of sailors, that he passed from one vessel to another until he was at length appointed to the command of one of the most important ships in the royal fleet. Transport by water always played a considerable part in the wars which were carried on in Egyptian territory, and the author has elsewhere drawn attention to campaigns conducted in this manner under the Heracleopolitan dynasties, and you would see that the Ethiopian conquerors adopted the same mode of transit in the course of the invasion of Egypt. Yeah, this writing here is so small. Okay, so he's trying to do a treaty with them. They can leave peacefully and go to Syria, get out of their lands, their territories, with their wives, children, etc. Two successive and vigorous attacks made in this quarter of Saduku, etc. They ran under the walls of the enemy's fortress, etc., etc. Okay, so yeah, that's really interesting. It's quite a big chapter on Hyksos in Egypt. I think we've covered enough. Okay, so if you like this video, give us a like, add your comments, and we'll get back to you on those as soon as we can. Don't forget to subscribe to us, it's all important. And then go share this video with all your family, friends and others. Hopefully it has cleared up who the Hyksos were, the difference between them and the Israelites that were oppressed by the Egyptians, made slaves, all that sort of stuff there. That there's a remainder that were left behind when the Hyksos were finally ousted out by the king at the time and went to Avaris, etc., etc. Yeah, so give us a like, subscribe to us, our channel, add your comments below the video, and then go share this with all those you know and more.